have you on start.
Okay. All right, well, this is easy. I get to introduce myself. So my name is Kelly Mantoan. I am the founder and chairwoman of this conference. I am a wife for 17 years. I have 5 kids. My 2 youngest have a neuromuscular disorder known as spinal muscular atrophy, and so I've been a special needs parent for coming up on 10 years now. So people have been asking me today why I wanted to do this conference and what gave me the idea. And I realized that I'm in a pretty active Facebook group, and people were sharing other conferences by either secular or Protestant groups and putting out there, who wants to go to this, who wants to go to this? And I just remember thinking, we can do this, I can do this, we can have a conference like this. And I looked around and I was surprised when there is really nothing else out there like this. There's some conferences directed towards religious education, inclusion in Catholic schools, but nothing geared towards supporting Catholic special needs parents. And we really do have unique needs. And so I decided to start this conference, and I put out in this group, what talks do you want? What do you need help with? What support do we need? And one of the most overwhelming topics that came up was burnout, caregiver burnout, in various ways. People were exhausted and they wanted advice, they wanted help. And so I decided that would be my topic for today, hopefully a practical talk to address not only the physical, mental burnout, but also the spiritual burnout, the unique spiritual burnout that we as Catholics can feel as special needs parents. And I think most special needs parents feel burnt out more often than not. And they don't want to continue feeling this way, this exhausted, worn out way, but trying to take better care of themselves, it just feels like one more thing to do on the to-do list. We're already doing all the normal things, in our marriage, in our homes, in our jobs, in our families, but as special needs parents, we're also dealing with appointments and caregiving tasks. We have additional financial stress related to medical bills, dealing with insurance companies, trying to get a bath chair for 5 years. We have emergencies that just come up. I was in the hospital this week for 4 days with my son, pulling a conference together. So we have additional things on top of us. So when other people say they're burnt out, but we are also really burnt out because it's additional for us. And I think we know in some ways when our choices and actions are contributing to our feelings of burnout, but we're kind of stuck. And for a lot of us, I think that burnout and overwhelm just becomes like a default. Like we don't even really know what not being burnt out is anymore because we're just sort of going at this exhausted pace. And for some of us, we might even be ignoring signs of depression under the guise of it's just burnout, as if suffering like this and dealing with it and not getting any help is just normal. That's just what you have to do as a special needs parent. So I'm here to dismiss that because it's not just about us. The consequences of burnout affect more than ourselves because we become short-fused, we can become angry, we're impatient, we can become resentful towards our children and those that we have to care for, resenting the jobs that we're doing. And as a result, our marriages, family relationships, friendships can suffer. Mary gave the statistic, 80% of marriages, special needs parents break up, have problems. Siblings have problems. And so putting in the work to take care of ourselves, take care of our relationships, and prevent burnout, it's not optional, and it can't go at the bottom of the to-do list. It must become a priority so that in caring for ourselves, we can not only survive, but thrive in our roles, in our vocations as spouses, parents, friends, and caregivers. So I don't want you to think that this is like a quick fix, easy feel-good type thing, because we're dealing with very complicated medical diagnosis often. But by investing just a small amount of time each day back into ourselves, what I call in my talk the peace in the margins, we can lighten our loads physically, mentally, and spiritually and become special needs parents who aren't living under the constant, dark, draining clouds of burnout. So there's only two rules, only two things here. You have to give up the feelings of guilt, and you have to give up being a martyr. It's two sides to the coin. So I feel like some special needs parents, they don't take care of themselves because of guilt. They don't feel they deserve it, that they're not worth it, that this is how things are and they can't get any help. They just have to deal with everything. And if they try to get help, they feel guilty. They feel like if they're getting help and making time for themselves, then somebody else isn't getting enough time or attention. Like there's not enough to go around. So if I sit down and read a book for 10 minutes, that's 10 minutes my child doesn't have me and they're suffering. And you can't look at it that way. You can't see that taking care of yourself is taking away from anyone else. There's enough to go around. Then the martyr. And we all know people like this. You refuse help because you don't want it. You feed off that attention. And you rationalize why you have to do everything, why you can't have help. And you don't see how you're contributing to burnout. It's just like this is just how life is. I have no control over it. You know, it's like theatrics. Like I can't even talk about it without gesturing wildly. And martyrs behave like they're trapped in a situation, even when there is help available. People can literally be like, let me help you with that. And they're like, no, I will do this. I can handle everything. It's for me to do. You can't do that, okay? So you gotta let go of the guilt and you gotta let go of the martyr complex. And that's how we'll move forward in taking care of ourselves. So on the tables I had my assistant place a self-care inventory. And you can just glance at it. There's 5 different categories. And these are basic needs that need met. So when I'm talking self-care, I'm not like, we're all gonna go to a spa and get pedicures and facials. That's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about basic needs. And meeting basic needs, it doesn't have to even necessarily be pleasurable. These are going to maybe be uncomfortable things. But these are things that maybe you make sure that your children always get, your spouse always has these needs met, but you don't do for yourself. So think about going to the doctor for a well visit, getting routine lab work or dental work. These are not fun things. This is not how we want to spend our free time. But I can tell you all my kids are up to date on all those types of things. You know, when they're sick, I let them take a break and lay on the couch and take it easy. You know, I give them breaks in the day, but I don't do that for myself. You know, a great example of this is I'm on blood pressure medicine. I have high blood pressure. And like I said, my kids are all up to date. I have 5 kids, all up to date on their appointments and everything. And I run out of my blood pressure medicine. The doctor's like, you need to come in. You're overdue for a well visit. I'm like, okay. He's like, we'll give you a few more months. Try to come in. I'm like, totally coming in. Totally coming in. And I run out again. And I ask for the refill, and he's like, okay, but you're really overdue. You need to come in. And he gives me a less month. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to come in and take care of myself. This is a priority. Tony's like, you need to go in. You have to get your medicine. I'm totally going to do it. I run out again, and this literally happened several times. So I was, way out. Finally, the doctor's like, I'm giving you less than a month. It was like, you have to make an appointment. Do you want to make it right now? No. I will call later this week, I swear. I went at almost a month without my medicine because I refused to make the appointment. And I was having headaches, and I felt awful. And Tony's like, what's the matter? I'm like, I've been out of my medicine for a while now. And then when I went to the appointment, the doctor's like, your blood pressure's really high. I'm like, I know, I've been out for a long time. And he looks at me like I'm nuts. I'm like, but I have 5 kids, but I'll get better. But this is just an example of things these are basic needs that need met that I wasn't meeting. So don't think of self-care as like over and above extraordinary things. Some other examples. Do you prepare specialty food for your kids? I know some of my kids have restrictions. We do certain diets, different things, prepped, blended foods. But then you just eat leftovers yourself. You pick off their plates, or you just eat junk food on the run. So you make time for your kids to eat well, maybe your spouse to eat well, not making the same time for yourself. Do you wear leggings with holes while making sure your kids are in proper fitting clothes? Guilty again. Do you encourage your kids to sit and read for fun but feel guilty relaxing with a good book? Where do you need help meeting your own needs? So as you glance at this list, where are these things? And you can see there's a scale from 5 to 1. And if you're at home watching this, I will have a link to this form then. But if you do a quick Google search for self-care inventory, you can easily find one. If in one of these categories, either physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, or professional, you find you've got a lot of ones, you can tell where you're kind of lacking and where you need to maybe start investing a little more time. And first, of course, I understand that there are times when we're in survival mode and you can't take 5 minutes during the day. You don't have time to worry about your clothes, what you're eating, anything. You're just trying to get through the day. I get that. I was just in the hospital this week, and I was picking French fries off Fulton's plate while trying to encourage him to eat the same French fries so we could get discharged. I understand that there's times when you won't have the ability to invest in self-care. But that's why when you're not in crisis mode, you have to invest in it. You have to see where you're lacking and start putting the time in. For me, I know that I need a lot of sleep. I can't stay up late or get up super early and do stuff. If I cut too much into my sleep, I'm a bear the rest of the day, and I can't properly take care of everyone else. So I really prioritize sleep as much as possible. I go to bed early, I sleep in when I'm able to, because I also know that I'll be up several times at night. So if I give myself a lot of time, it works out. And so then when I'm in the hospital and I'm trying to make do on those really uncomfortable hospital beds and chairs, I'm not dead after several days. I can keep going because I've invested in myself up to that point. So think about that when you're looking through the list. And of special note, and it's on the inventory, but how do you make time for God amidst your caregiving? Certainly physical, psychological, emotional, all that's important. But spiritual self-care, we may recognize the symptoms of physical burnout, but are you suffering from spiritual burnout? Are you depriving yourself of time with God? Maybe becoming a special needs parent damaged your relationship with God. Maybe you're angry, harboring resentment. Maybe you feel your prayers aren't being answered, so why bother? Why put the time in? I understand because I've been there, and I can tell you that spiritual burnout is real and it hurts. A medical diagnosis challenges our faith in ways we've often had no experience with. And no matter how strong we felt our faith, when all our prayers, pleading, and tears seem to go unanswered, we can fizzle out and drift away because it seems like too much work to keep on believing and doing something that has let us down and may continue to do so. And I get that. After my 10-year-old son's diagnosis, I pulled back on my faith and my prayers, and I went through a real time of anger and sadness, and I wasn't really praying. I was basically just asking other people to pray because I just didn't feel like I had it in me. I was still very upset, but I came through that, and I felt like, yes, I'm accepting, I've got this, moving forward. Got the second diagnosis for our younger son, and it just knocked the wind right out of my sails again. And that was even harder for us. And I turned away, and we continued, my husband and I, to go through the motions of the faith. We came to Mass, told our kids to get to confession. We did the things, the physical things, but there was no connection there. We had just broken it off because we were just too upset. We couldn't handle it. And I could tell there was a difference in my life, especially looking back, to not have that. It's an emptiness, and then it's easier to fall into the anger, the short fuse, the impatience, all those symptoms of burnout. They were there, and there was more of them because I didn't have that spiritual backbone or there supporting me to help get over any of that. I was going through all the difficulty of these diagnoses, but I totally turned my back on my faith to help me with that. So I learned, though, that in time, God is here for us. And we are struggling with these medical conditions, not because God wants to break us down, but because he knows it can build us up. And it's not a matter of, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. which is, I think, the worst saying ever. It's because we are being asked to share our struggles with him and those around us. And he wants us to get help through prayer and spiritual self-care and through allowing others to share in these burdens with us. We are not supposed to go it alone. We're not supposed to be taking all this on ourselves. We're supposed to be working on the spiritual self-care, reaching out and having God support us and trusting him. And then, as I'll continue with the talk, to ask for help, to make time to meet our other needs and the needs of our families. We're not to be doing this alone. So making time for yourself so you can pray and meet your basic needs is what we want for our kids as their parents, and it's what God wants for us as our Father. So reconnecting with God and making time for him daily needs to be a part of what constitutes your self-care. Like other changes, I'm not saying it has to be like a big thing here. It's not like a spa weekend, so I'm not saying go do a silent retreat for a week or something. That's not where we start with. We're going to start with small, actionable steps, okay? And it's going to make a difference. In all things, start with something small, and you're going to see a difference. So start with 5-minute chunks. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but that's easier to take on than like large radical things. So 5-minute changes. So you find 5 minutes a day. And rather than, if you think, I have 5 minutes, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to check Facebook. Don't pick your phone up, put your phone down. Say as much of a rosary as you can. 5 minutes. Open up the Bible, read a verse of scripture, sit and reflect for 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes, that's all I'm saying. I'm not telling you to do anything more than 5 minutes. Practice some deep breathing. Maybe do some stretching exercises instead, if that's your thing. Or if you've been in the same pajamas, just go, change into something fresh, wash your face, brush your hair, use some like really nice essential oils if that's your thing. 5 minutes, take 5 minutes for yourself. I think also it's helpful, sit for 5 minutes and find things to be thankful for. Just sit for 5 minutes and think of things to be thankful for. This was instrumental for me to getting over the spiritual hump. And I don't think you can discount the importance of being thankful and being grateful for things. Even in the darkest times, the worst times, you can be thankful for things. And by focusing on those good things, no matter what, you're going to start seeing where God is working in your life, where he is carrying you, where he is supporting you, and that's going to start giving you hope that if he's supporting you now, in this time, he's going to keep supporting you. So when I'm in the hospital, in the ER, and my son's getting IVs and getting medicine, and I have to wonder what's going on, I'm thankful for the attentive staff. I'm thankful that I live close enough to a really great children's hospital. I'm thankful that, for better or worse, everyone here knows us and has our files and his records on hand. I'm thankful that my in-laws were already planning to come and visit, and they can tackle laundry and some childcare and meal planning. As I'm sitting in a room, sleeping on a really uncomfortable plastic bed, and I'm getting woken up with alarms and monitors, I'm thankful that my son's able to get treated, that his medicine has stopped the throwing up, and that I can walk downstairs to a cafeteria and get some really good sushi. So 5 minutes every day, if nothing else, find things to be thankful for. And it's a great place to start to help rebuild your faith if you're still struggling. Some other things that I've done, I just like to sit and drink coffee in the morning quietly with my husband. Self-care for you, also encourage your spouse to practice self-care, work together. There were many, many years when we couldn't go out, we couldn't go on dates, we couldn't do anything, so basically sitting alone in the morning and drinking coffee, that was our time together, and it's still something we enjoy. Or at night, sitting together and having a glass of wine or something stronger, whatever, depends on the day. That's our time, and we would just jealously guard that, and if kids would wake up or need something, though, they would just have to deal with it for 5 minutes. Kids can be quiet and deal with themselves for 5 minutes. or put a TV show on or something for 5 minutes and put that time in. So if you look back at the self-care list, where do you need to invest more than 5 minutes? Even if you give yourself that 5-minute break, what are the things that you need to work on? They're going to take you more than 5 minutes. Ask your spouse or a close friend where they think you might need help, because they'll tell you, they'll be honest. And then ask them if they are willing to help you make time for those things. Can they give you time to say more prayers, to catch up on your checkups, to go for just regular haircuts? And I find that the people around us, they want to help, but it's good to have specific requests. Think about where you could use the most help. If you won the lottery tomorrow and you could hire anyone you wanted, what would you want to unload? Write these things down so when someone asks and offers you help, you have an idea to give them. If you know a friend that's a wonderful cook, ask her to make some freezer meals so when things get crazy, there's food ready. If you have another friend that loves to organize, ask her to help you figure out a way to store all this medical supplies in your closet. Don't be embarrassed to ask for help, even with the most basic things like house cleaning. Maybe you won't be able to find a friend who wants to come scrub your toilets, but perhaps they will collect some money so you can hire a housekeeper once a month or when you've had an extended hospital stay. It's the worst thing to come home from an extended hospital stay and have to deal with a messy house. And if you don't have family that can help you with that, if you can bring someone else in, you should do it. You shouldn't feel like you have to deal with that when there's people that are willing to help you. When you get help from other people, it frees up time for you to take care of yourself. When you're no longer spending 3 hours to look for that one type of suction tubing in your closet because it's been reorganized from your friend who is very happy to help you do that, that saves time, that gives you more time for yourself so you can take care of yourself so you're not so stressed out. And it's key to preventing burnout, is to getting help and to make time for yourself. But, of course, humbly admitting we need help and then asking can be a huge hurdle for special needs parents. I understand that some of you were probably thinking you would rather pull your hair out than ask for someone to come help you organize medical supplies or do your laundry or make meals for you. Because up to the point of our child's diagnosis, we probably felt like our life was headed down a well-known path, totally in charge, hands on the wheel. But when we lost control of this future that we envisioned for our child and our family, and we have to accept an uncertain one in its place, I find we can try to control and micromanage everything that we do have within our power to bring a sense of security to our lives. But we can't control everything, and we shouldn't try. We are not the only person who can clean or run errands or make dinner. Now, we are unique in that we are our child's parents, and we can only we can love our kids in that capacity. So, a good example for me is we have nursing care, and I'm very blessed to do that. And there's things that I outsource to the nurses to do. They can get Fulton dressed, they can help feed him, administer medicines, there's lots of things that they can do for him. Now, he would love for me to continue to do everything. And even if the nurse is like, if he's here, the nurse is here, I can be on the other side of the house and he will scream for me to hand him something that's right in front of him, even if the nurse is right there. But I don't have to do that. I can outsource those things to the nurse. I can outsource them to grandma, to friends, to siblings. Other people can do these things. But when it comes time to fight over his IEP, that's my job. That's when I have to be there. And that's why I need to be not burnt out so I can show up 100% to fight for what he needs. When he's in the ER and he needs someone to fight for his rights and his care and what he can tolerate and what we should be doing and what maybe we shouldn't be doing, I need to be there for that. I can't outsource that to somebody else. I need to be there 110%. And so that's why I have to take care of myself outside of those times and outsource and delegate some things so I can be present at the times to do the things that only I, as his mother, am able to do. Know that even if you outsource some of what's on your plate to make time for self-care, you're not being replaced or losing control, but allowing others to practice charity while you make time to refuel yourself. Pride may keep us from asking, but humility will allow us to open our hearts and homes to those who are looking to serve more intimately in their parishes and communities. You're giving people an opportunity to be life-giving for themselves and for you. They get the opportunity to serve, and you get to receive charity. So it's a win-win. So if you are lucky enough to live in a community, in a parish, like I do, and you have a lot of family and friends to support you, that's great. Those people will probably try to step up, and that's where you'd want to turn first. But if you don't have maybe a real supportive community locally, maybe you're thinking, well, like, who am I going to ask? I've got no one. A couple ideas for respite care, places to look, would be you can start with government agencies for your state, county offices, see if they have anything. You can start with organizations related to your child's diagnosis, if they know of any programs. If your child is seen at a children's hospital, you can ask the social worker that they have on staff to help you. We use Beata Pediatric for nursing, and the thing with a nursing agency is they obviously want to get hired, and they want as many hours as possible. So they know how to write letters of medical necessity, they know your insurance, they know how to ask for things. So if you approach them and say, I don't think I can get nursing, but I really want nursing, I just even want a little bit of something, they will look and they will find and they will fight to get you anything. So, and if they can't, they can possibly point you in other directions. So you can check with a nursing agency like Beata, or another nursing agency if you don't have something like a Beata near you. Our diocese, the Camden Diocese, does have a health ministry. You can look in your diocese to see if there is a health ministry that might have programs. And lastly, you can also look online at a site like care.com to see about creating an ad and hiring someone to meet your very specific requirements. But again, I think if you look, start in your community, in your parish, because again, I'm sure we've all been approached by people who say, how can I help? What can I do to you? And you're like, I don't know, I'm not sure. You get caught off guard. So when you create a list and have a list of things that you need done that would actually be helpful for you to have when people approach you, or again, if you feel comfortable asking people to help you with these very specific tasks. Self-care exists on a continuum, and because we can take the concept too far, we often do as little as possible out of fear of somehow, we do as little as possible self-care out of fear of becoming self-indulgent. But yet, even when we do too little, like, we still feel really guilty. We do feel guilty when we take 5 minutes to read a book, or we do feel guilty when we step out to get our hair cut. As a special needs parent, we need to realize it's harder than we think to cross the line into destructive self-care or self-indulgence. So I have a couple examples, just so people understand what I'm saying and what I'm not suggesting. So a life-giving type of self-care would be visiting like a hair salon for regular hair trims and color. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have a friend that can come and help watch your kids so you can step out and do that, that's great. But if you're constantly visiting a high-end salon for expensive treatments while you're also still struggling to pay for medical equipment, that might mean you've crossed a line, and that's not what I'm recommending. It's life-giving to exercise and move every day. So you want to do a YouTube video, you want to stretch, you want to jog, do something like that, that's fine, that's great, that's good. It's good if your husband comes home and you ask him to do something, clean up dinner so you can exercise. That's perfectly reasonable, and you shouldn't feel guilty about that. Leaving the house for hours at a time to attend some specialty fitness classes without having proper childcare lined up, or leaving somebody last minute, leaving your kids with someone who's not expecting it so you can do these things, that's where you've crossed the line, and that's not what I'm recommending. Limiting outside activities and saying no so you don't overextend yourself, or limiting your child's activities due to accessibility or because you don't want them to get sick certain times of year, That's perfectly normal. You don't need to feel guilty about saying no to these things. But flaking out on commitments or not allowing your child any outside activities so you can do what you want and pursue just your things, that's when you're crossing a line. Cultivating a hobby to relieve stress and self-care, that's such a great thing. I have a friend who has a daughter with SMA, and this woman, she makes beautiful quilts, and her daughter is very medically needy, very medically involved. But she has her set up in this large room, and she sews, and she brings everything into her daughter's room, and her daughter helps her pick out things, and she shows things, and she just works alongside her daughter, and she stops and assists her daughter as her daughter needs it, and they just work together on these things, and she creates these beautiful quilts. She didn't have to give that up just because she's a special needs parent or because she has a very medically involved child. But again, spending all your time and all your money on supplies and not sharing it with your child, using it to stay away all the time, then perhaps you've crossed a line. Making time to go to mass, confession, adoration, or spiritual direction. Again, we should never feel guilty about these things. But if you're spending all your time at your church volunteering, running retreats, and not meeting the needs of your spiritual needs of the kids in your family, you're crossing a line there. You have to take care of yourself, but you also have to make sure that the spiritual needs of your children are being met before you start doing everything for your parish and running every sort of parish event that comes your way. Skipping the laundry or housekeeping for a bit because you're tired. Do I need to tell you, don't feel guilty about that? Occasionally curling up on the couch, watching your favorite episode some evening and wanting to be left alone, you don't need to feel guilty about that. However, binge watching shows for days on end and ignoring the needs of your family, allowing your house to get filthy, trash to pile up, things like that, that's crossing a line. And that might also be a sign that something else is wrong, that maybe you're actually struggling with depression. And that's something that you need to take care of. Treating depression is important. And we don't just tolerate depression as burnout and something as a special needs parent. So if you're afraid of slipping into selfishness or unnecessary indulgence, make a list of a person who properly practices self-care, what they might look like. Just have this idea in your head. Or what I recommend is find sort of a mentor, someone who you admire, maybe another special needs parent who's been in the trenches longer than you, and they just seem to have a healthy balance. They seem to have it together. Look at that person, and maybe talk to them, get to know them. How do they juggle everything? How do they balance things? And understand your circumstances are different, but you might learn from them on how you can kind of manage things and find that balance in your own life to juggle self-care and the care of your family and needs. I think that finding balance in your life as a special needs parent and avoiding burnout is something that comes in time. I know when you first get a diagnosis, it's just very overwhelming, trying to figure out all the appointments and the care and everything. It's all new and it's very overwhelming. And then if you have other kids, you're trying to juggle everything. And so you do go through a period of flux, and you're going to be more burnout and more worn out. And in time, you find a new routine, a new normal. And going to a mentor, like someone that's been down this path before, they're going to be able to tell you that and say, this is fine, this is normal, that you're completely overwhelmed with all this stuff now, but it will get better. And you're going to learn to schedule all this and deal with all this and continue on your life. And things that maybe you're giving up now because you just can't imagine doing it all, you're going to be able to do those things again down the road. So if you can find a mentor, if you're still struggling in those early stages, finding a mentor can help you in that regard. And then that brings me to the whole idea of paying it forward. Once you've settled into your own new normal, and maybe you're finding a good healthy balance between managing your family's needs and your own needs, you might find help in supporting other special needs parents in their own struggles with burnout. You might be able to take on some care for them and some things for them, some tasks that they might still be struggling with. Because we're not going to find support from mainstream society. I find that my friends of just typical children, you try to talk to them about what you're going through and they're just always completely overwhelmed. Even if everything is going well, Like everyone's healthy, everyone's happy, everything's fine. Families that just have typical kids are just still completely overwhelmed. They're just completely, my normal, everything's okay is still scary to a lot of people. Or it's just, people just still feel sorry for me. And they must assume that my life is just overwhelming and exhausting and awful. So if I am experiencing true burnout and I'm upset, I can't really turn to them because they feel sorry for me even when everything's fine. I need to go to another special needs parent who's going to understand that, this is just exceptional, and I'll get back into my usual normal, and everything will be fine. So we need to look out for each other. We need to help each other. So in the way that I started helping other people myself was I had this blog. I still have it. That's how I met Mary. She had a blog too. And I didn't start writing about special needs stuff at all. I didn't want to share that part of my life at all. And I didn't want people to think I was putting my boys on display or trying to get page views by writing about these kids in wheelchairs. So I didn't write about it. And then over time, I started sharing a little bit more and a little bit more. And it was usually happy stuff that we were doing. And occasionally I would maybe put a prayer request on, like, oh, this is coming up, this is coming up. And I just shared it gradually. And what I realized was the more I started sharing, I started getting emails, more and more emails from people. And it was often from people that were in just probably the hardest parts of their life. They had just gotten one diagnosis, maybe a second diagnosis for their children, and they were just struggling. They didn't know anybody. Nobody around them had a child that was affected with anything. And so when they found me online, I was the first person that they knew that had like a physically disabled child. And so they emailed because they didn't know who else to talk to. And I felt totally unqualified. I was like, why are these people emailing me? Don't they see these weird pictures and these funny things I'm writing? I am not qualified to offer advice on anything. So I felt really out of place, and I was always afraid of saying the wrong thing, of offending somebody. But I started responding, and I realized I was often sending the same sort of thing over and over, so then I started writing those things in posts and sharing more and more about our story and our experience. And I was offering a lot of reassurance to these people that what they were going through was normal and that the feelings that they were feeling were fine and normal, and they weren't awful people for being this angry or being upset at God, and that things would get better. And through all that, it just helped me in my own journey. And even though I still don't always understand like why my family was the one that was chosen to have 2 kids with SMA, but I can see how God is somehow using me and our story and our experience to help other people. And so if you also help other people, I think it can help you as well, as a form of self-care and getting through your own journey as a special needs parent. I think you also start to recognize the signs of burnout in your friends and in other special needs parents, maybe when they don't recognize it. You can see it, you can recognize that this isn't just normal craziness, this is more than that. This is something that they need help for, and you can spot that. And you can really offer assistance and make a difference to people who otherwise have no one else around them to tell them these things. Like I said, most people and their families and friends just have no idea to help. They're just completely overwhelmed anyway, but you can look in and say, no, you're really struggling with this. This is really an issue, and this is something specifically that we should work on and get help with. And that's valuable. And if you feel like it's something you're good at, you can do that on a larger scale. You can help with larger groups, diagnosis-specific groups, like for me, MDA or SMA groups. I started attending the Beata agency that we're through, started organizing parent groups, and they asked me to come because I was one of the more experienced special needs moms and with pretty involved kids. Like, thank you for that distinction. So I would go, and there was a lot of parents there who were struggling, and I was just I can go and I can offer perspective and advice for these people who right now it just seems like everything's falling apart and they can't imagine what life down the road is going to be like. And I can just offer a little bit of hope, like it's going to be fine. Like this is okay. And you can do that too, and that provides a lot of hope and joy to other people. So it's something, paying it forward and helping other people is something that might come years down the road, or maybe it's something that you can only do in small amounts. We're not all called to that same level of activism. Not everybody has to run a conference. It's not what I'm saying. But if you want to run a conference, speak to me afterwards and I will find something for you to do. Thank you. So, if you're feeling drained, then you're probably helping people too much, because helping other people should recharge your batteries and not deplete them. And if someone doesn't want help, you just have to let go and pray for them and remain close by. I find some special needs parents that don't want help in the beginning of their journey and they push everyone away. You just stay close and you pray with them, because eventually they're going to know that it's not all in their control and they're going to need help, and you want to be there to help them because you're going to understand it more than other people. So this is where I am in my journey as a special needs parent. I still have tough times, but I no longer despair and feel hopeless or overwhelmed. My experience has taught me gratitude, and my faith is a bedrock to sustain me. I no longer blame God, but I trust in Him, and I see Him working through those around me when I am supported and helped, versus constantly being overwhelmed all the time by trying to do it all myself. I know how to ask for help and what will actually be a help to me versus be a huge annoyance. And I don't feel guilty when I take 5 minutes for myself, or when I go to bed early, or when I make an effort to meet my basic needs. And helping other people on their journey has helped me to understand perhaps a tiny sliver of God's plan, and it's brought me peace in my own journey. So I can't promise you a life 100% free of burnout, but I hope that I've shared a few ways to help you learn to prioritize your needs so that you'll have the strength and grace to tackle whatever God's plan for your life will be. Thank you.